from Shabbos yesterday and today. We continue in the 27th chapter, speaking about thoughts, negative thoughts that enter a person's mind. Thoughts that shouldn't be there, that we know that they shouldn't be there. How are you supposed to deal with them? So we've explained that we should be happy that the thought comes into our mind while we are engaged in our own kind of activity, like whether it's work, breakfast, not now during Tanya, not during prayers. That'll be a different understanding. But when you're engaged doing your own thing and a negative thought comes in of a loved one that is inappropriate, it's inappropriate, that thought of a friend that maybe did something to you that you're upset about. Now, to fix it is one thing. We're not talking about the fixing of something. We're talking about what happens to us is a negative thought, negative energy, evil thought. That's actually what it's called. It's actually called an evil thought. It's evil because from Torah's perspective, our thoughts are also part of our behavior. And as we've learned in chapter 12 of Tanya, the Beinoni, who we are in training to become, or working in that direction, BITs, Beinoni in training, we're totally responsible for our thoughts, the appropriate ones. Not the thought that enters our mind, we don't have control over, but the thought that we meditate, cogitate, willfully engage in is something that we're responsible for. So, negative thoughts need to be repulsed. So the Alter Rebbe continues with this idea. Magnificent. That every repulsion of a thought that comes into our mind, that comes from Sitra Achra, comes from a bad place, right? That here below, of course. So the fact that we take an initiative by, and I know that this word is not liked by most people, suppressing that negativity. That negative thought is to push it away is suppressing it. Produces an arousal above, meaning that the negative force, we suppressed negative force down here of Sitra Achra. What we have done is actually in the spiritual realms, where the Sitra Achra, where the negative force comes from, that soars like an eagle, metaphorically, it's also suppressed. Wow. How so? Because of me. Suppressing my negative thought down here, that allows the negative force where it comes from, above, to be suppressed through us. That which the verse says, soars aloft like an eagle, and yet is brought down. How? Because what I did over here, I affect up there. And that's divine satisfaction. That when we subdue the negative forces down here, and those negative forces from within, and quoting the Zohar, says that thereby God's glory rises above all, more than any other praise. And this ascent is greater than all else. Wow. So we're able to avert our minds from the negative thought, fulfilling God's command, as in the third paragraph of the Shema, don't go after your heart's desire that your eyes perceive and want, and you're not going after it, right? Averting your attention. Thereby you're subduing Sitra Achra. So don't feel depressed or very troubled in your heart because these negative thoughts come into you. I mean, be somewhat troubled, because if you're not troubled, then you won't deal with it. But don't be overly troubled. Even if you're engaged in this all the days of your life, this conflict of negative thoughts coming into your head. Right? Why? Why shouldn't you be? Because maybe that's what you're created for. Maybe you were created that you're going to have negativity from your animal soul that you need to subdue that negative force constantly. And concerning this, then, we have an answer to what we had in the first chapter when Job said that God created the wicked. So the Alter Rebbe asked there in the first chapter a question: what do you mean? God creates wise and foolish, short and tall, strong and weak people, but not good or bad, not righteous or wicked. So what do you mean he created wicked? Right? That's the freedom of choice that we have. So Job's statement, what it means is not that God actually created wicked people. God forbid. We have the freedom of choice to choose. But what he did do is create people with the thoughts and the musings that are like wicked people, meaning evil thoughts that enter the mind. That's what he created, in order that they should avert it from their mind, push it away, subjugate the sitzer acher, the negative force of the animal soul that is trying to creep in into you and control you. Yet never to be able to annihilate that negative force, because that's only accomplished by the righteous. Wow. Imagine that you have a negative thought come into your mind, and according to the Zohar, when you push that away, that there is no greater praise of God, no greater glory than God, nothing greater than all else than pushing away that negative thought. Now, who would have thought that? You would think that, greatness of the person is in what you achieve, not what you push away. As a matter of fact, it even sounds not like PC, because you're suppressing the negative urge. Hey, is that good? And this is the greatest praise, glory of God? Think about it for a moment, maybe from this perspective. When you give charity, in the congregation or amongst people, perhaps we're motivated by externalities. In other words, what people will think of us. Perhaps when we do an act of kindness to a friend, we're doing it to mitzvah, but maybe the motivation is, maybe the motivation is not so pure. Maybe you're doing, I'll scratch your back if you, then we'll scratch my back. Maybe I have an expectation that's going to come out of my doing a kindness to you, expecting something in return. So anything that we do, perhaps we're really not serving God. It's self-serving. Now, it's still a mitzvah if you give charity and you do a act of loving kindness to a friend. It's still a mitzvah, no question. If you put on your tefillin and pray in synagogue with other people, and maybe your motivation is, or somewhat of a motivation is not merely your prayers, but, how you're perceived by others, which is, if we were honest with ourselves, that's definitely somewhere a concern for us, how we're perceived. That's why we dress the way we dress, and that's why we do the things that we do often. At least in the subconscious of us, it's for sure an element, right? So a mitzvah it is, but it's not complete. When do you know you have a complete mitzvah? Well, perhaps the only place, I don't know it's the only place, but perhaps the most real place is in your thoughts. So for example, if you had a negative thought about, John, or Ruvain, right? About Ruvain. He said, Ruvain, I want to tell you, I really had this nasty thought about you, but don't worry, when it came to my head, I pushed it away. We don't do that, right? I mean, we're not foolish enough to do that. So when negative thoughts do come about, and we do indeed push it away, no one knows about what we did. except for God. So maybe that's the only time that we're really doing something because we believe in God and we're really connected to God. Maybe. Well, and perhaps that's an understanding what the Zohar says, that there's no other greater glory for God because, well, it's truly for God. Because if you didn't believe in God, that he knows your thoughts, then, you would sit in those negative thoughts perhaps and, be the victim of whatever thing happened and feeling sorry for yourself, feeling negative towards that person that did whatever they did, and so on and so forth. I think you get the picture. So therefore, subjugating that negative force of the animal soul, that that thought came into mind, suppressing it, indeed, suppressing it. By the way, that doesn't mean to deal with the issue. We're not talking about here how to deal with the issue. We've dealt a little with that before, as a matter of fact. Here we're talking specifically how to not allow negative thoughts to control us and bring us down, that we're going to be saddened and not be full of vitality, alacrity in serving God and doing what we're needed to do. So those negative thoughts can really bring us down. So here the Alter Rebbe is saying, quoting from the Zohar, how awesome it is that when we do that, and not only that, hey, maybe that's what you were created for. You were created in order to always engage in that battle. And with that, we understand that Job said God created the wicked. He didn't create a person actually wicked, but he created them with that which the wicked people always have. What's that? An animal soul, negative influence, sitter acher, that is controlling them. Our battle and conflict is not to let that control us. So we will always have negative thoughts coming into our mind, because only the righteous can transform the negativity of their soul into something that is pure. But us, me, all of us, we will be hopefully constantly engaged in this. Now, hopefully the negative thoughts will become maybe not as strong, not as often, not as, hateful. Because we've grown. We've moved forward in life. But definitely it will be there. No doubt.